During my proposal at a family dinner, she laughed and said, "God, no, you're not husband material. Ask me again when you've made something of yourself." I left the ring on the table, walked out, and never spoke to her again. Her family called apologizing. 2 years later, she showed up at my office, VP on the door. She started crying, begging to talk. I called security. "Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks." The sound of a velvet ring box hitting a mahogany table is quieter than you'd expect. It's a soft thud, barely audible over the clinking of silverware and the low hum of expensive jazz. But in that moment, for me, it sounded like a gavel coming down. A life sentence ending before it even began. I should have seen it coming. That's the cliche, isn't it? Looking back, the red flags weren't just waving. They were practically slapping me in the face. But when you're in love, or when you think you're in love, you develop a convenient kind of blindness. You mistake disrespect for honesty and cruelty for ambition. I was 27, working as an operations manager for a mid-sized logistics firm. It wasn't a sexy job. I didn't wear Italian suits, and I didn't drive a car that made a growling noise when I turned the key. But I made 6 figures, owned my condo, and had 0 debt. In my world, that was success. In Sarah's world, that was settling. Sarah was 25, working as a junior social media coordinator for a fashion brand. She made barely enough to cover her car lease, let alone rent in the city, so naturally, I covered everything. The mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, the vacations. I did it because I was raised to take care of the people I love. I thought we were a team. I was the foundation, she was the decoration. But about 6 months prior to the night, the dynamic shifted. She started getting obsessed with the concept of the power couple. She spent hours scrolling through Instagram, showing me influencers posing in Dubai or on yachts in the Mediterranean. "Look at this, Mark," she'd say, shoving her phone in my face while I was trying to finish a quarterly report. "He's 26, and he just bought her a G-Wagon. What are we doing wrong?" "We aren't doing anything wrong," I'd say patiently. "We're building a life. Real wealth takes time." She would just sigh, that heavy, theatrical sigh that meant I was boring her. "You're so safe, Mark. You're terrified of risk. You're never going to make the big jump, are you? You're content with comfortable." She started using that word like a slur. Comfortable. I remember one night specifically. I had just fixed her car, a blown radiator she couldn't afford to repair. I came in, grease on my hands, tired but happy to have helped her. She was on the couch, dressed up, drinking wine I had bought. "Thanks for fixing it," she said, not looking up from her phone. "My friend Jessica's boyfriend just sold his startup for $4 million. They're moving to a penthouse downtown." I washed my hands in the sink, trying to scrub away the grease and the sudden irritation I felt. "That's great for Jessica. Is it?" Sarah muttered. "Or is it just what happens when a man actually has ambition?" I let it slide. I always let it slide. I told myself she was just stressed or feeling inadequate compared to her friends. I told myself that once I proposed, once we made it official, she would see that my stability was a feature, not a bug. I spent 4 months saving for the ring. It was a platinum band with a solitaire diamond. Classic, elegant, and expensive. It cost me a significant chunk of my savings, but I wanted her to know she was valued. I wanted to prove I wasn't cheap, just careful. I planned the proposal for her father's birthday dinner. It was a double celebration, or at least, it was supposed to be. Her family loved me. Her dad, Robert, was a retired contractor, a man who respected hard work. Her mom, Ellen, treated me like the son she never had. I thought I was on solid ground. I walked into that restaurant with the ring burning a hole in my jacket pocket, thinking I was about to start the rest of my life. I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. The restaurant was one of those places where the menu doesn't have prices and the waiters scrape the crumbs off the table between courses. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere heavy with the scent of truffle oil and old money. Dinner was going well. We were laughing, sharing stories. Robert was telling a joke about his golf game, and even Sarah seemed in good spirits. She looked stunning in a black dress I had bought her for Christmas, her hair cascading down her shoulders. She was holding my hand under the table. I took that as the sign. When the dessert menus arrived, I made my move. I cleared my throat. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Robert, Ellen, I started, my voice sounding slightly higher than usual. Before we order dessert, I have something I'd like to say. The table went quiet. Sarah's sister, Emily, gasped softly, her eyes darting to my pocket. She knew. I had asked her for advice on the ring size. I turned to Sarah. I slid my chair back and got down on one knee. The restaurant chatter seemed to drop away. I could feel the eyes of other diners on us. This was it. The grand gesture she always wanted. Sarah, I said, holding the velvet box. I opened it. The diamond caught the low light, sparkling fiercely. You are the love of my life. I know I'm not always the most exciting guy, and I know I focus a lot on the future, but that's only because I want to build a beautiful one with you. I want to take care of you, forever. Will you marry me? Silence. It wasn't the shocked, happy silence you see in movies. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Sarah didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't cover her mouth with her hands in joy. She stared at the ring. Then she looked at me. And then, she let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a cruel sound, devoid of any warmth. She looked at her mother, then back at me, a smirk curling the corner of her lips. God, no. The air left the room. Sarah? I whispered, my knee starting to ache against the hardwood floor. She picked up her wine glass and took a slow sip, looking down at me like I was a beggar asking for change. Mark, get up. You're embarrassing yourself. I what? I said no, she said, her voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. Look at you, Mark. You're sweet. You really are. But you're not husband material. Sarah, her father, Robert, slammed his hand on the table. What the hell is wrong with you? She ignored him, her eyes locked on mine, cold and predatory. You're safe, Mark. You're a safety net. You're the guy a woman settles for when she's 35 and has 2 kids and needs someone to pay the bills. I'm 25. I'm in my prime. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I felt like I was disassociating, watching the scene from the ceiling. I need a man who is going places, she continued, gesturing vaguely at me with her free hand. You've been in the same role for 3 years. You drive a Honda. You talk about 401 ks on date night. You have zero ambition. I can't tie myself to an anchor. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Ask me again when you've actually made something of yourself. Maybe then I'll consider it. But right now, you're just insufficient. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a bridge collapsing. The love, the patience, the excuses I had made for her for 3 years, it all evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I looked at the ring in the box. It cost me $6,000. It represented months of overtime. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't ask her to reconsider. I slowly closed the box. I stood up, brushing the dust off my knee. I looked at her one last time. She was smiling, smug, expecting me to plead, expecting me to promise to do better, to be better. She wanted the chase. She wanted to see me dance. Instead, I placed the ring box gently on the table, right next to her half-eaten sea base. Check, please, I said to the waiter who was hovering nearby, looking terrified. I pulled $200 bills from my wallet, enough to cover my share in the wine, and placed them under the salt shaker. Mark, son, wait, Robert said, half rising from his chair, his face beet red with humiliation. It's okay, Robert, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. She's right. I'm not husband material. Not for her. I turned and walked out. I could hear Sarah's voice as I reached the door. Oh my God, he's being so dramatic. He'll be back in an hour. I walked out into the cool night air, loosened my tie, and took the deepest breath of my life. I didn't look back. I didn't go back in an hour. I drove straight to my condo. I walked in, grabbed a trash bag, and systematically went through the apartment. Her toothbrush? Trash. Her shampoo? Trash. The hoodie she left on the couch? Trash. I wasn't angry in a throwing plates kind of way. I was efficient. I was operating like I did at work, identifying a bottleneck and removing it. I sat down on my sofa, pulled out my phone, and opened her contact. Block. Then Instagram. Block. Facebook. Block. TikTok. Block. I severed the digital limb. Then I poured myself a bourbon, sat in the silence of my boring apartment, and realized for the first time in years, my bank account was the only thing I had to worry about. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Robert. I almost didn't answer, but I respected the man. He wasn't her. Mark, His voice sounded tired. Older. Hello, Robert. I. I don't even know what to say, he stammered. I am so incredibly sorry. Ellen has been crying all morning. Emily is furious. We had no idea she was like this. It's fine, Robert. It's better I found out now than after the wedding. Divorce is expensive. She's an idiot, Robert said, his voice hardening. But Mark, you need to know the truth. I got into her phone last night while she was arguing with her mother. She's not just ambitious. There's someone else. My grip tightened on the phone. Who? Some guy named Jason. Apparently, he's a VP of strategy at some tech firm. She's been texting him for months, telling him she's single, telling him she's stuck with a roommate until she finds the right time to move out. A roommate. I paid for her food, her clothes, her life, and I was a roommate. He drives a Porsche, Robert added, disgust dripping from his voice. That's what this is about. She thinks she has him lined up. She told Ellen that Jason is going to take her to Paris next month. She used you as a placeholder until she secured the upgrade. I see, I said. The final puzzle piece clicked into place. The comparisons. The late nights. The contempt. She wasn't waiting for me to be better. She was waiting for him to be ready. I'm done with her, Mark, Robert said. I told her she's cut off. No more money from me. If she wants a high roller, let the high roller pay for her insurance. Thank you for telling me, Robert. Take care of yourself. I hung up. That moment was the turning point. I could have wallowed. I could have spent months depressed, wondering why I wasn't enough. But knowing there was another guy, knowing she had monkey branched, killed the sadness instantly. All that was left was a cold, hard resolve. Ask me again when you've made something of yourself. The words echoed in my head. She wanted a VP? She wanted power? She wanted a man who wasn't safe? Fine. I went into work the next day and walked straight into the CEO's office. There was a position opening up in our aggressive expansion division. It was a nightmare job, high travel, high stress, commission-based, focused on breaking into the Asian markets. It was the kind of job that ruins marriages and causes ulcers. I had avoided it because I wanted to be home for dinner with Sarah. I want the director of international logistics role, I told the CEO. He looked at me over his glasses. Mark, that requires 80% travel. You've always turned down travel because of the girlfriend. I don't have a girlfriend, I said flatly. I have free time, and I want to make a lot of money. He smiled. You start Monday. For the next 2 years, I ceased to be a person. I became a machine. I lived in airports. I slept in hotels in Tokyo, Singapore, and Seoul. I negotiated deals at 3 a.m. I stopped watching TV. I stopped hanging out at bars. I took the pain of that humiliation and burned it as fuel. Every time I felt tired, I heard her laugh. Every time I wanted to quit, I saw her rolling her eyes. I didn't do it to win her back. I did it to kill the part of me that was weak enough to love her. I made something of myself. I doubled my salary in year 1. I tripled it in year 2. I was promoted to vice president of operations before my 30th birthday. I bought a new place, a penthouse, actually, not because I needed it, but because I could. I bought a tailored wardrobe. I got in the best shape of my life because the hotel gym was the only place I could clear my head. And as for Sarah, I heard whispers through the grapevine, mostly from Emily, who would text me occasionally to check in. Karma didn't hit her all at once. It was a slow bleed. Jason, the Porsche guy, turned out to be exactly who you'd expect him to be. He wasn't a VP. He was a contractor with a leased car and a mountain of credit card debt. He didn't take her to Paris. He took her to a motel in Atlantic City and asked her to split the bill. He slept with her for 3 months, got bored, and ghosted her for an Instagram model. By the time she realized her mistake, I was 6 months gone and already in Hong Kong closing $1 million shipping contract. She tried to reach out then. I saw the blocked notifications in my call log. Blocked call, blocked call, blocked call. Then came the emails to my work address. Subject, heavy heart subject. Missed you today subject. Can we just get coffee? I sent them all to a folder labeled spam without opening them. I wasn't playing hard to get. I just didn't care. She was a stranger to me. A bad investment I had written off. I thought that was the end of it. I thought she would fade away into the background of my past, a lesson learned in blood and money. But narcissists don't like being ignored. They don't like the silence. And they certainly don't like finding out that the safe option turned into the prize they spent their whole life chasing. I was sitting in my corner office on a rainy Tuesday, reviewing the Q3 projections, when my intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reynolds?" My assistant, Claire, said. Her voice sounded tight. "There is a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, and well, she's refusing to leave." I frowned, checking my watch. "Who is it?" There was a pause. "She says her name is Sarah?" "She says she's your fiancée." Fiancé. The word hung in the air of my office like a bad smell. I stared at the intercom speaker, my finger hovering over the button. For a second, I felt a flicker of that old anxiety, the kind where your stomach drops and your palms sweat. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by a cold, metallic curiosity. "Send her in, Claire," I said calmly, and leave the door cracked. I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city skyline. I adjusted my cuffs. I caught my reflection in the glass. The man staring back wasn't the 27-year-old in the ill-fitting khakis who begged for affection. This man was 30, wore a three-piece charcoal suit, and ran a division responsible for $40 million in annual revenue. I heard the heavy oak door creak open behind me. "Mark." Her voice was smaller than I remembered, less sharp. I turned around slowly. If I were writing a movie, this is the part where she would walk in looking gorgeous, making me regret everything. But real life isn't a movie. Real life is stress, gravity, and consequences. Sarah stood in the doorway, and she looked tired. The Instagram baddie aesthetic was gone. Her hair, once perfectly blown out, was pulled back in a messy bun that looked more frantic than chic. She was wearing a trench coat that looked a size too big and scuffed boots. But it was her face that shocked me. The arrogance was wiped clean, replaced by hollow cheeks and eyes that darted around the room, assessing the square footage, the leather furniture, the mahogany desk. She was calculating the value of my life. "Hello, Sarah," I said. I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't smile. I stayed behind my desk, using it as a fortress. She took a step forward, her eyes welling up with tears instantly. It was a performance I recognized. It was the same face she used to make when she overspent the grocery budget. "Oh my God, look at you," she breathed, her voice trembling. "Vice President." I saw the name on the door. "Mark." I knew it. I always knew you could do it. She walked toward me, arms slightly open, expecting a hug, expecting a welcome home. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her with the same expression I use when a vendor tries to overcharge me for shipping containers. She stopped 3 feet away, sensing the invisible wall I'd put up. Her arms dropped. "You look amazing," she whispered. "I know," I said. "What do you want, Sarah?" The bluntness of the question seemed to slap her. She blinked, rapidly. I wanted to see you. It's been 2 years, Mark. 2 years of silence. Do you have any idea how hard that was for me?" I almost laughed. "Hard for you? You were the one who laughed in my face and told me to get lost, remember?" "I was confused," she blurted out, the tears now flowing freely. She dabbed at them with a tissue she pulled from her pocket. "I was young, Mark. I was stupid. I was under so much pressure from my friends, from social media. I didn't know what I had until I lost it." She took a breath, composing herself, shifting gears from victim to strategist. This was the part one was waiting for. "But look at this," she said, gesturing around the office, her voice gaining a strange, manic confidence. "Look at where you are. Be honest with me, Mark. Would you be here, in this office, wearing that suit, if I hadn't done what I did?" I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me. I did this for you," she said, nodding as if she actually believed it. "I knew you were too comfortable. I knew you needed a push. I had to be the villain so you could become the hero. I sacrificed us so you would get angry enough to reach your potential." She took a step closer, placing her hands on the edge of my desk, leaning in earnestly. "I broke your heart to build your character, Mark. And look, it worked. You're the man I always knew you could be. Your husband material now." There it was. The phrase. The key to the lock. She smiled through her tears, a hopeful, twisted smile. She genuinely thought this was a compliment. She thought she could take credit for my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. She thought she could cash a check she didn't earn. "I've missed you so much," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Jason, that guy was a mistake. He was abusive, Mark. He used me. He borrowed money from me. He treated me like garbage. I realized nobody has ever treated me the way you did. You were my home, and I'm ready to come home." She reached across the desk, trying to touch my hand. I pulled my hand back as if she were radioactive. Are you finished? I asked. She froze. What? I asked if you were finished with the speech. I sat down in my leather chair, leaning back, interlacing my fingers. Because that was quite a performance. You almost had me until the "I did it for you" part. That was a bit heavy-handed. Mark, I'm being serious. No, Sarah. You're being broke, I said brutally. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I know about Jason, I said, my voice steady and low. I know he dumped you. I know you moved into a studio apartment with 2 roommates. I know you lost your job at the agency 6 months ago. I know your dad cut you off. Her face went pale. How? I have resources now, I said. But I didn't need a private investigator to figure this out. You're here because you're drowning. You looked up your safety net to see if he was still stupid enough to catch you. You saw the VP title on LinkedIn and you thought, jackpot. You thought you could walk in here, cry a few tears, flatter my ego, and slide right back into the passenger seat of the life I built. That's not true, she cried, her voice cracking. I love you. You don't love me, I said, leaning forward, my eyes locking onto hers. You love the lifestyle you think I can give you. You love the stability. You love the fact that I'm not Jason. I stood up again, towering over the desk. You told me to ask you again when I'd made something of myself, I said. Well, I have. I've made a fortune. I've made a reputation. I've made a life. So, she whispered, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. So ask me. Ask me again, Mark. I'll say yes. I swear to God, I'll say yes. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I looked for the woman I had planned to grow old with. I looked for the girl who used to sing in the shower, the girl I had defended to my friends, the girl I had wanted to protect from the world. She wasn't there. There was only a stranger in a trench coat who smelled like desperation and cheap perfume. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just the mild inconvenience of a meeting running overtime. I don't have a question for you, Sarah, I said. But I do have an answer. I reached for the phone on my desk. Mark? Panic crept into her voice. Who are you calling? Mark, please. We can talk about this. We can go to dinner. Just one dinner. I pressed the speed dial button labeled security. Mark, stop. She lunged for the phone, grabbing my wrist. I shook her off easily. The physical contact made my skin crawl. Security. A deep voice answered on the speakerphone. This is Mark Reynolds, VP of Ops, I said, my eyes never leaving Sarah's terrifyingly wide eyes. I have an intruder in my office. A woman. She's refusing to vacate the premises and is becoming aggressive. We're on our way, Mr. Reynolds, the voice said. I hung up. Sarah stared at me, her mouth agape. The realization washed over her slowly, like freezing water. She wasn't winning. She wasn't charming me. She was being evicted. You're calling security on me? She screeched. The sadness was gone, replaced by the ugly, entitled rage I remembered from that night at the restaurant. After everything we've been through, I gave you the best years of my life. You gave me a trauma that took 2 years to unpack. I corrected her. And now you're trespassing. You arrogant prick, she screamed. You think you're better than me? You're nothing. You're still just a boring, safe little man. You'll never find anyone like me. That's the plan, I said dryly. The office door burst open. 2 uniformed security guards stepped in. Ma'am, the larger one said, stepping toward her. You need to come with us. Don't touch me, she yelled, backing away, knocking over a stack of files on my desk. Mark, tell them to stop. Mark, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that. I love you. Please. I have nowhere to go. She began to sob again, but this time it was real. It was the terrified sobbing of someone who realizes the bridge is burned, the boat has sailed, and the water is rising. I turned my back on her. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. Mr. Reynolds? The guard asked. Remove her, I said, not turning around. And make sure she's banned from the building. If she shows up again, call the police. Mark, she screamed, her voice moving away from me as they dragged her into the hallway. Mark, look at me. Mark. The heavy door clicked shut. The silence returned. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the air conditioning. I adjusted my tie in the reflection of the window. My assistant, Claire, buzzed in a moment later. Her voice was shaky. Mr. Reynolds? I am so sorry. Are you okay? I walked back to my desk and sat down. I picked up the stack of files Sarah had knocked over and straightened them out. I'm fine, Claire, I said. Actually, I'm excellent. Do you need a moment? No, I said, opening my laptop. I need you to schedule the logistics review for the Singapore account and order me some lunch. I'm starving. Of course. What would you like? I smiled. A real, genuine smile. Something expensive. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.